Okay, question number 11 is the continuation of the practice on the introduction to algebra. Question says, it's a little blurry here, the dimensions of the side of the following figure are labeled, create a polynomial that describes the perimeter of this figure. So you're going to want to, for any perimeter, add up all the lengths of the sides. So I'm going to do that down below. I'm going to ignore the fact that it's multiple choice. Pick a corner, I'm going to pick the lower left corner and work my way around. So I have x plus 2x minus 1 plus, do I need that bracket around the, no, I don't really need that bracket, but I'll put it in to keep it organized. Negative x plus 4. I got to add to that x squared. I've got to add to that the bottom, and the bottom is x squared minus 6x minus 6. And when you scan and look at this expression, you're looking always for like terms. Again, because there's a plus sign in front of these three brackets, you don't need the brackets whatsoever. So I'm going to group my terms. I have an x squared here and an x squared here. That's going to give me 2x squareds. I'm going to choose to start with my highest power. So 2x squareds. Now I'm looking for all of the x terms. So the terms with an x in them. I've got the 1x in the front, this 2x, this minus x, and this minus 6x. So together, what am I going to have? 1 plus 2 is 3. Take away 1 is 2. And 2 take away 6 is going to give me minus 4x. And then moving on to the next one. The next term is just your constants, your numbers. So negative 1 plus 4 is going to be 3, and then 3 take away 6 is going to be minus 3. So your choice then would clearly be D for your answer. So again, perimeter, add up all your sides. If the question had been an area question, you would multiply your length by your width, or you would do whatever you have to do depending on the shape for your question. Number 12 is a little blurry. It says translate the English sentence into an equation using the variables indicated. The temperature on Friday showed a decrease of 6 degrees compared to 2 days before on Wednesday. For the temperature 2 days before on Wednesday. Use F for the number of degrees on Friday and W for the number of degrees on Wednesday. So write down what that just said in English. F is your temperature on Friday, and your W is your temperature on Wednesday. Now those are my two variables. We need now to decide how we're going to make an expression, and what we know is that Friday showed a decrease of 6 degrees compared to the temperature on Wednesday. The temperature on Friday is 6 degrees more than what it was on Wednesday. Or you can say Wednesday's temperature minus 6 is equal to Friday's temperature. So if you want to do it that way, you could say whatever the temperature was on Wednesday, take away 6, that could equal Friday's temperature. You could say Friday's temperature plus 6 degrees, that could equal Wednesday's temperature. That isn't a choice, but it could have certainly been a choice. D is the only one there that I see that is correct. Why would A be wrong? Because A says 6 times Wednesday equals Friday, and Friday was not 6 times temperature of Wednesday. And B says that Wednesday's temperature times 2, so double whatever it was, take 6 away is equal to Friday. That's very complex. And C says Wednesday's temperature plus 6 degrees equals Friday. So that's wrong. This answer here would be correct for D, but so would this one. It's not there as an option. Question 13. The area of the vertical faces of rectangular solid with height and base edges of L and B, and the height is H. The expression, I'm going to rewrite this. So the area of the faces is the height times 2, which is kind of strange to put an X. I don't know why they did that. I'm going to write it as an L, kind of like that. So the length plus the base multiplied by 2 times by the height is equal to the area. Now it says write this formula without parentheses and without a multiplication sign. So this little X sign here could be often confused as an X and not multiply, so that's not a good idea. So they want us to write it without parentheses or brackets and without that X sign. So H times 2 is 2H. Better to write it as the coefficient first, the letter second, and then if I rewrote it as L plus B, then to clear that bracket, we could apply the distributive law that states that 2H times L is going to be 2HL, and then 2H times B is going to be 2BH. Now, why did I write them in the letter? Generally alphabetical. If in doubt, write it out alphabetical in terms of the order of your letters, but I'm sure you would get the right answer if you didn't do that and made a little mistake. But generally, if it's multiple choice, the answer should be there, and I noticed that they didn't write it particularly well either. They had HL and HB. I wrote it as BH. It doesn't matter. Okay, moving on. What instructions say to combine the like terms? Well, if we're going to combine the like terms, we've got to know what's the same. We have an x term and an x term. We have a y squared term and a y squared term. So now I'm going to put them together. I'm going to use my fraction skills. So 8 over 9. Now I'm going to take away from that 1 over 3. I'm going to change it to a common denominator. So it's going to become 3 over 9. And those two terms are alike. They can be dealt with. And now I have to deal with my y terms. Y squared terms, in fact. So minus 3 over 4 y squared plus 1 over 3 y squared. Those need to be made into a common denominator. I'm going to do this into a 12. So 4 goes into 12 3 times, so minus 9 over 12 y squared plus, I'm going to change the y squared into a 12 times by 4. So now I am left with simplification duties. Pretty straightforward. Rewrite my question. Deal with the x first. So 8 over 9 minus 3 over 9 is going to give me 5 over 9x. Just subtracting like terms. And then 9 over 12. Remember that's a 4. So negative 9 plus 4 is going to give me minus 5 over 12 y squared. And that's your final answer. I combined the two different terms that were like, the x's and the x's and the y's and the y's. Because the coefficients were fractions, I had to apply fraction skills. Now, the next question is one that requires us to multiply. I want you to recognize there's a monomial in the first bracket because there's no plus or minus signs separating your letters. There's a monomial in the second bracket and a monomial in the third bracket. Your answer then is going to be the product of all these numbers applying the laws of exponents. So 6 times 7 times 5. 6 times 7 is 42, and 42 times a negative 5, negative 210. And then you do your letters, you must add your exponents. So x. How many x's do we have? We have 5 and 1 and 2. So x to the 8th. And how many y's do we have? Y to the 4th plus y to the 3rd is 7, plus y to the 1 is y to the 8th. When you multiply monomials, you're only going to end up with one monomial for an answer. There's no plus or minus sign separating these terms. Therefore, you're only going to end up with one term for an answer. Now, this question is a little bit different. We have a monomial on the outside of a bracket, and we have three terms inside. We multiply across the bracket, we are going to get three different terms in our answer. We're going to do this. This is, remember, it's called distributive law. So negative 10 times a negative 5 is going to be a positive 50. How many a's? We have a to the 1 times a to the 1. Is a squared. We're going to have b to the 11th. Multiplying negative 10 times a positive 11 is going to be negative 110. A, how many a's? 1a, b to the 8th. And then lastly, negative 10 times negative 5 is plus 50. A squared, b to the 4th. And that question is complete. Distributive law. Multiply your coefficients and then add your exponents when you're multiplying. This is a division question. Division questions are meant to be solved by dividing your coefficients and subtracting your exponents. So 13 divided by 65 doesn't win evenly, but it does reduce, because 13 goes into 65 5 times. So it's going to be basically 1/5 for the coefficient part. Now in terms of the letters, x to the 7 divided by x to the 2nd is going to be x to the 5th, because that part is going to subtract. Y to the 3rd divided by y to the 7 is going to be y to the negative 4th. And then z to the 8 doesn't divide by anything, so it's just going to be z to the 8th. Now, you're usually not allowed to write your answers with negative exponents. Therefore, you have to change them. There's two ways you could write this. One way would be to keep it, this is rather odd and cumbersome, and definitely not favorable. 1/5, you have x to the 5th, which is positive, z to the 8, which is positive, and your y to the negative 4 become y to the positive 4. And that be multiplied together. The preferable way to do it would be to notice that you have a 1 for your coefficient. You don't have to write, so you would write x to the 5th, z to the 8th, over, you have a 5, and y to the 4th in the bottom. But no, there's really a 1 up there. That 1/5 is your coefficient. You can put the 1 there if you like, but it doesn't have to be there. And then notice there are no negative exponents. And the last two questions. Now this question has two distributive laws. So 5 times 2 becomes 10. And 5 times a negative x becomes negative 5x. Negative 6 times 7 is negative 42. And a negative 6 times a positive, or negative 4 becomes a positive 24x. Now you have to gather up your like terms. You have two constants. So 10 take away 42 is going to be minus 32. And you have two variable terms. So negative 5 plus 24 is going to be a 19x. And then minus 5, or minus 32. You may see somebody write it like this. Negative 32 for your constant plus 19x. And that is correct. Just not preferable because generally we work from the variables down constants at the end. But I would mark that right. But you would never see that option on a multiple choice quiz. It would always be written as it is here on the left. And last but not least, this is a dirty bird, which is great. Now I'm going to tell you, and I don't really want to tell you the most common mistake, but I'm going to, I don't know what to do here. I'm going to do the right way. I'm not going to tell you the wrong way. Square brackets, round brackets. So you're going to work your way from the inside out. I have round brackets and I have a 6y in the front. I'm going to multiply that 6y and multiply it by the negative 2. I'm going to clear that bracket. So it's going to become 6y squared minus 12y. Put the square bracket that I didn't deal with. Keep the 3y, I didn't use anything to do with that. And if you look at what I've done, all I've done here is take the coefficient and the variable and distribute it through the bracket. I'm going to rewrite the rest of the question. I'm going to do it in steps. What I recommend at this step is you look at the question and see, can I do anything inside that square bracket? And in fact, you could. You can make your life a little bit easier by taking the square bracket and simplifying. 3y take away 12y. That could break down to 6y squared minus 9y. And that's just a little bit easier to deal with. I have a minus 5 in front of that bracket and a 6y term hanging out at the very, very beginning doing nothing. So this minus 5y is going to get brought through. Don't forget the minus belongs with that 5. So you can rewrite the 6y squared. Forget about it. Negative 5 times a positive 6 is going to be negative 30y squared. And then negative 5 times a negative 9 is going to be a positive 45y. Are there any like terms? Always ask yourself, are there any like terms? And there are. So 6 take away 30 is going to be negative 24y squared. And lastly, plus 45y. So step by step. Careful, careful.